Thanks very much. Just to start off, my name's Linda. I'm a white woman with dark brown hair tied back, and I'm wearing a denim shirt and black trousers. Okay, the reason I'm here today is to share a celebration of an event that took place in April 1998. It was a first for Manchester, and it was also a first for Europe. It was the first conference of disabled lesbians and gay men. Now, as we're all aware, disabled people are not just a group of people who are all the same. We experience simultaneous oppression. So there are obviously disabled LGBTQI people, and there are disabled black people, people of all different faiths and backgrounds, and disabled people who live in various alternative subcultures. And also what's important to point out is actually Manchester has played a really big part, both nationally and internationally, in disabled people's self-organisation. For a lot of its history, it's been a very welcoming city to disabled people, particularly in the 80s and 90s. Not quite so much recently, unfortunately, but we won't go into that. Peterloo Memorial. So yes, I think it is important to recognise that individuals, disabled individuals and non-disabled allies, as well as Manchester City Council and Greater Manchester authorities, have actually played a significant part in disabled people's self-organisation. Okay. The thing that's worth pointing out as well is that, as the previous speaker said, times have changed since the 1980s. This was a conference of disabled lesbians and gay men. Nowadays, it would be a wide open conference that would be disabled LGBTQI plus people. And also language has changed since then. You'll hear the term able-bodied used in this article, and we don't use that term. It's non-disabled people, not able-bodied people. So just bear in mind that there are some differences now. What you're going to hear is an article that was produced in Coalition magazine in September 1988, which describes the conference. It's a report of the conference by a disabled lesbian and poet called Sue Napolitano. And it's been read by Ju Gosling, who is, now let me get this right, I think she's Deputy Chair of REGARD, which is the national organisation of disabled LGBTQI plus people. I think before we see this, I think it's really important to point out what a major achievement this was in 1988. There wasn't accessible transport then. If you were a wheelchair user and you wanted to go on the train, you were in the guard's van. There wasn't internet, there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't anything like that. There weren't electronic means at all to make communication more accessible for some people. And there wasn't automatically, well, not even automatically, there was less availability of finance to be able to employ your own personal assistants, whatever your access requirements were. So it was a massive achievement, and people came from Europe as well as all around the UK to this conference because it was such an important achievement. And now we'll have the article read that was written by Sue Napolitano, and I'll just say a few more words afterwards. Thank you.
My name is Ju Gosling, also known as Ju90, and I'm a co-chair of REGARD, the National LGBTQI+ Disabled People's Organisation. I'm a white woman with pale olive skin and a hennaed corona crop under a black leather cap. I have green eyes behind black plastic glasses, black wrist braces and silver-coloured jewellery. I'm wearing a purple t-shirt with Girls Who Do Girls on it in silver, with a lavender badge bearing a rainbow wheelchair symbol. I'm sitting in a manual wheelchair with a bright green cushion, and behind me is the Pride flag. I have the honour of reading Sue Napolitano's article from Coalition magazine, describing the events that led to the founding of REGARD in 1989. Sue Napolitano writes, "Another first for Manchester." April 1988 saw the first national conference of disabled lesbians and gay men. The following article is a personal account of the event and an enlightening look at some of the issues raised. First ever national conference. The weekend of 15th, 16th and 17th of April 1988 was an historic one because it saw the first conference of disabled lesbians and gay men ever to take place in Europe. Though it was billed as a national conference, it was such an attractive event for disabled lesbians that contingents attended from as far afield as the Netherlands and Germany. The conference took place in Manchester, and over 60 disabled delegates converged on the Mandela Building for a weekend packed with serious discussion, getting to know people, and fun. For all of us there, it was the first time we had ever been with so many disabled lesbians and gay men. As a disabled lesbian or gay man, it's very easy to be isolated and to feel like you're the only one. Such feelings have to evaporate in the company of 60 other people who share similar experiences. It was as relaxing and refreshing as getting into a warm bath. And I, for one, came away from the conference with a new sense of confidence and wholeness. Numerous workshops took place throughout the Saturday and Sunday of the conference. Topics covered included coming out as lesbian or gay and disabled, experiences within the lesbian and gay community, homophobia in the disabled community, body images, relationships, Clause 28, and many more. A report of the conference will be produced which will give detailed accounts of the discussions that took place in these workshops. But I'd like to use this bit of space to give a taste of the kind of issues raised. Double oppression. Disabled lesbians getting together to talk about our place in the lesbian community universally reported bad experiences. It's a familiar story. Meetings and social events are overwhelmingly held in inaccessible places, excluding many disabled lesbians. For many lesbians, these events are the way they get to meet other lesbians in a relatively safe environment. Not being able to participate can have a pretty devastating effect. Being a lesbian on your own is not much fun. As well as these concrete issues, women spoke about the more subtle effects of ideas that prevail in the lesbian community, of what sort of person a lesbian is. Images of strong, independent women never needing help, spending their leisure time striding across the Pennines or with the stamina to stay up bopping lithely all night at discos, were regarded as pretty alienating, exclusive and irrelevant to the needs and lifestyles of disabled lesbians. Pressures to try to conform to these notions could leave us exhausted, isolated, and blamed by able-bodied women for not being wonderful enough to overcome all the obstacles laid in our way. On the other hand, the effort of continually challenging these notions and the oppressive behaviour of able-bodied lesbians could be similarly draining. Not surprisingly, there was a strong sense that as disabled lesbians, we need each other. We need to support each other, to organise events in ways that are right for us, and to appreciate each other. Sexuality and Stereotypes. Sexuality was another issue which was discussed in a number of groups. Not in the sense of who does what to whom, when it's okay, you can stop blushing, but in relation to the effect on disabled lesbians and gay men of mainstream society's denial of disabled people's sexuality. It was felt that as far as the mainly able-bodied lesbian and gay community was concerned, the stereotype image of disabled people as asexual makes it difficult for them to accept the existence of disabled lesbians and gay men. One woman spoke about the way she and her lover were assumed to be mother and daughter. Meanwhile, amongst disabled people, the frequent reaction to the outrage of having our sexuality denied is to forcefully assert a normal, i.e. heterosexual sexuality. This creates an atmosphere which tends to render disabled lesbians and gay men invisible, and has made it difficult for the disabled people's movement to recognise the existence of disabled lesbians and gay men and to respond to our needs. All this has left disabled lesbians and gay men in a kind of limbo, and has often made me feel that I'm a disabled person in one part of my life and a lesbian in another part of my life. The reality, of course, is that I'm a disabled lesbian all the time. Having a space to come together with other people experiencing the same sets of exclusions is a first move towards changing the situation. A little help from my friends. A feature of the conference was the level of support from the lesbian and gay community. People from the Haringey Lesbian and Gay Unit and the Northwest Campaign for Lesbian and Gay Equality worked hard all weekend, driving, arranging furniture, serving a continuous supply of hot drinks, taking guide dogs for walks and giving personal help where required. The concept of floating helper was an inspired invention. These people were identifiable by their badges, depicting fluffy white clouds floating in a blue sky. They could be collared to do just about anything at any time. Carry a plate of food, help someone out of a chair, give assistance in the loo, whatever. Excellent guidelines were produced for the helpers before the conference, which included useful tips like, please remember to address all remarks to the blind person and not the dog. These dogs are wonderful creatures, but they do not answer back. For me, the highlight of the conference was the disco on Saturday night. At last, disabled people were taking up all the dance floor, dancing with total freedom from inhibitions on wheels, crutches and feet, moving to the music in our own way and having a whale of a time together. At the final plenary session on the Sunday, it was decided that there was a need for a national communications network of disabled lesbians and gay men to be set up. The languid Lesbians and Gays Unite in Disability Steering Group, which organised this conference, will perform this task. Other decisions included an agreement to organise an anthology of the writings of disabled lesbians and gay men. We left the conference with a sense that our show was definitely on the road.
So yeah, I think that's a really, really powerful article, and that's why we wanted to share it with you today. It's quite interesting because I facilitated part of a conference. Well, it was a workshop within a conference in 2005, and it was a workshop for LGBTQI disabled people. And it is really, really powerful being with other LGBTQI disabled people. It is actually an amazing experience. And I think it's worth pointing out that there have been other groups in Manchester as well as nationally. There used to be a group of deaf gay men called Pink Triangle in Manchester, which Tony, our interpreter today, remembers very fondly. So, hope that was okay to say that, sorry. Yeah, and also there have been a couple of disabled lesbians groups as well, and more recently there's been a group of people with learning difficulties based at the LGBT Foundation. And in fact, what's worth knowing is the first group I've become aware of, although I've not done massive amounts of research yet, the social group of disabled and non-disabled lesbians and bisexual women called Gemma was actually formed in 1976. So I think that's a really important note as well, that it wasn't just in the 80s that everything started happening. Okay, well, I'd like to thank Greater Manchester Coalition of Disabled People for giving permission for that article to be shown. It comes from Coalition magazine, which is actually produced by GMCDP, and to thank People's History Museum for this event today. Thank you.